Please continue.
So this subset of curve is the classical for Macmillan carpets. And let us look at its definition. For each xn, yn belongs to the chosen subset of the product of A and B, and the first coordinate is the infinite sum of xn over the nth power of A. So how can we understand this? First, let us imagine a unit square. The unit square is divided into A times B small rectangles. Then we choose a pattern R. In the next step, we repeat the above process in the small rectangles in the pattern R. And this is the construction of the carpets. And Bedford and Macmillan independently determined the Hausdorff dimension of these carpets. It is a famous example whose Hausdorff dimension and Box's dimension don't coincide, except for some specialties. Moreover, if we define a continuous map T on the carpets by T xy equals to A times x and B, comma B times y, where A and B are bigger than 2, obviously it is expansive. And Macmillan proves that there exists an ergodic invariant measure supported on the carpet such that the Hausdorff dimension of this measure equals to the Hausdorff dimension of the carpet. This is proved by Macmillan. Later, Kenya and Paris has extended the work of Macmillan. They proved that for any compact invariant set contained in the torus, there exists an ergodic invariant measure supported on this invariant set with 4 Hausdorff dimensions. So this is, and this holds for any invariant set contained in the torus. Furthermore, Kenya and Paris obtained the following variational principle for the Hausdorff dimension of this invariant set. So let us look at the right-hand side. It is the weighted sum of the measure-theoretic entropy, where A and B is determined by the expansive map T. And the weighted vector is 1 over log A, comma 1 over log B minus 1 over log A. And the supermon is taken over all invariant measures supported on the invariant site. And pi denotes the projection map from the circle, from the torus into a circle. And it is the projection to the first coordinate. And S is another expansive map on the circle. It is defined by SY equals to B times Y, and B is bigger than 2.
Let me try to read this formula. I think this is Legrappier.
Yeah, it is the Legrappier formula. Yeah.
And maybe it is useful to write the last expression 1 over log A is entropy to the left. And then you have in the denominator log A, and in the numerator you have difference of entropies, which is kind of entropy condition which is what is related with B. And then there is this entropy, not condition, this another part of entropy in another direction, divided by Lyapunov exponent in this other direction. So you have 2 Lyapunov exponents, log A and log B. One is entropy divided by log A, which is No, it is difference of entropy divided by log A, and we subtract weaker expansion, whereas entropy just this HP star eta divided by this weaker Lyapunov exponent. So usually you have sum of entropies divided by Lyapunov exponents in consecutive directions. But entropies that do not make sense because these are entropies in some directions. So you consider some conditional entropy. Okay, so either you somehow define it or just take difference of the entropies in consecutive directions. You agree with me?
Yeah.
I just meant that it's comfortable to rewrite the last expression to add it to the first one of common denominator. Okay.
Okay, let's continue. So if X is an invariant set of the torus, obviously, clearly, tan X comma S is a factor of X comma T with the factor map as the projection map. And if we take the potential function equals to 0, and if A1 equals to this and A2 equals to 1 over log B minus 1 over log A in this, then one would just define P, which relies on A1, A2 as the Hausdorff dimension of the invariant set.
Yeah.
So if we consider the torus dynamical systems, then Pesin and Paris give an answer to this question. They just define this term as the Hausdorff dimension.
Could you go back one slide? When we have A1 and A2 and to find. Because you already divide by Lyapunov exponents. Of course, the basis is the Hausdorff dimension. One dimension is entropy divided by Lyapunov exponent. This is many for the for non-uniform case, it is many for.
But I think you were. Can you return to the first slide? To the slide.
First slide.
Right. So the question was, what is the interpretation of this expression? And I understand that you are now saying that in this example, we can interpret this as Hausdorff dimension.
And motivation.
Yeah, because it's A1 and A2 are just inverses of Lyapunov exponents.
Right.
Can you then go to the next slide? Yeah, so this A1, A2 are just inverses of Lyapunov exponents. So they are already somehow incorporated into this pressure. Okay.
Okay. So let's continue. And Barra and Feng, they also defined this term P A1, A2, and they called it A1, A2 weighted topological pressure by relative thermodynamic formalism and sub-additive thermodynamic formalism, especially when the underlying dynamical systems are subsets over finite alphabets. As an application, this definition was applied to the multifractal analysis on Cherbatsky gaskets. However, this definition relies on some certain properties of the surface. So this is only this definition could not extend to general dynamical systems. In 2016, Feng and Huang, they defined PA1, A2 for general dynamical systems using the weighted Bowen balls, which resembled the approach of Bowen and Pesin-Pistskel definition of topological entropy and topological pressure for arbitrary subsets. respective.
Let me say one more comment. Let me say, multifactorial analysis may be for a pool of exponents. So usually one has pressure against Legendre transform with measures dimension spectrum for Laplace exponent, and here you have two Laplace exponents. So you again try to decide what is Hausdorff dimension, probably of sets, having these two Laplace exponents, they one, right? So it corresponds to what is in dimension. Okay, go on.
Yes, this definition has resembled the traditional. This definition has resembled the Pesin-Pistskel the Hausdorff dimension type definition of the topological pressure. And for arbitrary subsets, this might be non-compact. And as they also obtain the variational principle. So they give an answer for general topological dynamical systems, how to define this term to satisfy the variational principle. And as an application, they give a topological extension of dimension theory of invariant set and measured on the higher dimension torus under expansive maps. I will introduce the weighted Born in later. And now we assume that A1 plus A2 equals to 1. Otherwise, one could make some scaling transformation and let W is bigger than 0 and less than 1. Tsukamoto defines PW. You could this corresponds to W1 minus W. Tsukamoto called it W-weighted topological pressure, and his method modified the traditional definition of topological pressure. But this is not the Hausdorff dimension type definition, but the definition using separating sets or covering separating numbers or covering numbers. And Tsukamoto's motivation arose from the calculation of mean Hausdorff dimension of some infinite dimensional fractals.
Tsukamoto's,
Yes.
So as far I have introduced four methods to give an answer to the question. The first is by Peña and Paris for torus dynamical systems, and the second is by Barrow and Feng, especially for subspace, and the third is by Feng and Huang in terms of weighted Born balls, and the fourth is by Tsukamoto. And I want to make some remarks on the last two definitions. These two definitions, this is by Feng and Huang, we call it A1, A2, which is the topological pressure, and this W topological pressure is by Tsukamoto. These two definitions have their own advantages. From the definition itself, the former one is closely related to Hausdorff dimension theory. Actually, it resembles the definition of Hausdorff dimension. Relatively, the later one by Tsukamoto is easier to calculate. Except for the variational principle for W, which is the topological pressure, Tsukamoto also proved that in the case when the potential function f equal to 0, these two definitions equal to each other. One could understand this as the Feng and Huang's weighted topological entropy, and this is Tsukamoto's definition of W-weighted entropy. topological entropy. This is a new equality. It is not the variational principle. As an application of this equality, Tsukamoto gave a new method to calculate the Hausdorff dimension of the backboard McMullen carpets we defined before. So there are still some questions unsolved. I want to introduce here. At the end of their article, Feng and Huang asked how to generalize their result to more general group actions dynamical system. For example, the abelian group. And they also asked, is there an analogous topological generation of the dimension formula for generals Laddy self-affine carpets? As an mentioned, Tsukamoto proved that Feng and Huang's definition and his definition coincide. His method is that both the left-hand side and the right-hand side satisfy the same variational principle. So these two definitions equal to each other.
Have you defined this PW or you plan to define it later? This PW.
Yes, this is by Tsukamoto. His
But have you defined it?
Yeah, he has defined it.
No, but you.
And I didn't.
You didn't.
I didn't mention the details for the definition here because I will use the first definition. So he proved that these two with the topological pressure satisfy the same variational principle. So these two definitions coincide. He also asked whether it is possible to prove the equality without using measure theory, that is, without using the variational principle to prove the equality. And assume that both these two definitions are generalized to group actions. Tsukamoto asked whether one could obtain some interesting consequences of the consequence, like the calculation of Hausdorff dimension of the traditional backboard McMullen carpets. So these questions are interesting and most of them are unsolved. And in my talk, I will introduce how to generalize Feng and Huang's definition of weighted topological pressure to abelian group actions. This is my work. So I will consider VB actions topological definitions, and first I will introduce some notations. Here, XT is a ZD actions dynamical system where X is compact and T is a family of continuous transformations satisfied that E0 is the identity map and the commutative property. And for n, for natural number n, let capital N be a subset of VB such as each coordinate of G of the vector is upper bounded by n, and lambda n be the cardinality of this set. We denote by mxt and ext be the sets of all invariant Ruelle probability measures and object measures respectively. And we also denote by the finite Ruelle partitions of x and px. Here are some notations. Next is the definition of measure-theoretic entropy for VB action enabled systems. The first is for finite partition and probability measure. We define the entropy for this partition. The second is for an invariant measure. We define the measure-theoretic entropy of T with respect to this partition. this is the collection, this is the intersection of some partitions. And this function is self-additive on n, so this limit exists and equal to the infinite. And the third, we define the measure-theoretic entropy of T with respect to the invariant measure by taking the supermode over all finite partitions. And now,
What's lambda n? Entropy with respect to partition. What's little lambda n?
lambda n is the cardinality of this set.
Because there is a capital lambda here, and this is u in this.
Yeah, this is
Okay, so u's going.
Here is the definition.
Okay.
Okay. So next, I will define the weighted measure-theoretic entropy. We will consider K dynamical ZD actions dynamical systems, and assume that for each I bigger than 1 and less than K minus 1, the later one is the factor of the former one is the factor map pi I. Let pi 0 is the identity map on the first space, and define tau I as the composition of this factor maps for each I, and A is the K dimension weighted vector. Each coordinate is non-negative. And we will introduce another weighted vector. Another weighted vector Ci. Let Ci be denoted as in this way. It is the least power of the sum of from A0 to AI minus the least power of the sum from A0 to AI minus 1. This is another weighted vector. Then we will define the weighted measure-theoretic entropy for invariant measure mu. We denote by H mu A, where A is the first weighted vector, and the T1 is the transformations for the first dynamical systems as the weighted sum of the measure-theoretic entropy of Ti with respect to this measure. It is a little strange why we introduce this new weighted vector Ci instead of AI. Actually, I define the weighted measure-theoretic entropy in this way because of the later proof. But unfortunately, I didn't know whether there are some special meaning of the Ci. So this is the weighted measure-theoretic entropy.
Looks like entropy or the sum of entropies when you take conditional measures as this power. Entropies. No. What is the form? Sum entropies. A plus entropy. B over A.
Yes, there is. Is it possible? Is it this one? But
More complicated, there are these.
for whether CI.
Somehow CI contains information what happens in the. I remember. I don't know.
You have to say the proof. Because you say you will deduce this for the proof.
No,
Yeah.
but there's notation.
What?
There's notation.
Exactly, but he says that the notation follows from the proof which he hasn't shown you. So
Yeah.
it's maybe better.
But I don't know any special meaning of the Ci. But if d equals to 1, if d equals to 1, then ci equals to ai.
Yeah,
This is by in the case of d equals to 1, this definition coincides with Feng and Huang's definition. I have followed their ideas of define the weighted measure-theoretic entropy. And then before we give the definition of weighted topological pressure, I will introduce the weighted Bowen bore for the K with the action analytical systems. For X belongs to the first space, compact space N, a natural number epsilon is possible, denoted by BNA as the collection of Y satisfy this condition. Here, call I-1 is the composition of the composition of the vector maps. It maps from x1 to xi. And it is a little complicated. If we consider a special case, that is this is not the non-weighted version. Then this definition coincides with the traditional Bowen bore. This is the non-weighted version. So we could understand this as a dynamical distance, which resembles the traditional distance di. And this symbol denotes the absolute function. The collection of such y is called the nth weighted Bowen bore of radius epsilon centered at x. We will use this definition of weighted Bowen bore to define the weighted topological pressure. Now I will give you the definition of weighted topological pressure for subset of the compact space X1. They might be non-compact. And let be a subset. S is non-negative, epsilon positive, N a natural number, and F be continuous on X1. We define actually it is an outer measure for Z. We denote by lambda F N epsilon AS in this way. Where the infimum is taken over all collections gamma equals to NG, AG, satisfying that NG is bigger than N, and AG is a subset of the weighted Bowen bore for some X, and it composed a cover of the subset D. From the definition, one could prove that this lambda is an outer measure. And this S dimension measure of Z doesn't decrease as N increases and epsilon decreases. So if we first take the limit over N and then take the limit over epsilon tends to 0, then the following limits exist. From since they are monoid over N and epsilon. And there exists a critical value of the S which we will denote by PA, such that this measure jumped from infinity to zero. That is, if S is bigger than this critical value, then the measure is zero. And if S is smaller than this critical value, then the measure equals to infinity.
Could you show the previous slide for a moment? Okay. Minimum over X. MJ is what? Is subsequence, or what is MJ? Small n is index J. Kind of collections, the gamma equals R, MJ, okay.
And create some
possible MJ. In film is taking over also MJ.
AG is a cover.
So in film of MJ. Where is in film? Here. Because I want to say what I have in mind, splitting the set into countable number of pieces to reach the property of outer measure is usually done for packing dimension, packing measure and packing dimension. Otherwise, you don't have outer measure at the beginning.
Okay.
So I started, that's why I'm trying to look where super is in, understand whether it is related and how is packing dimension, and I don't think so. So it just may take to get outer measure, nothing more.
Okay.
Am I right? Sorry.
Yeah, may I give a comment?
Uh-huh.
The definition, the above definition actually is not packing measure, but that's the Hausdorff measure.
Yeah. That's why my intuition to get outer measure is just to get outer measure. It has nothing to do with packing.
Yeah, yes, you're right. You're right.
Who was this? Feng. Feng. I see. No, go on.
Okay. As there exists a critical value of S, we have denoted it by PA. We will call PA when the subset equals to the whole base. We will call this quantity the weighted topological pressure of the potential function F with respect to the T1. And as a special case, if F equals to 0, then it is denoted by the weighted topological entropy.
This is just pressure, but entropy has constant or zero potential.
Yes. This definition follows Feng and Huang's idea, and the definition of weighted topological pressure. The difference between this definition with the Pesin-Pistskel definition is that here we use the weighted ball and ball instead of the traditional ball and ball. And this is one of the main results. We established the variational principle for weighted topological pressure. That is, for potential function F, the weighted topological pressure of F is the supernumber of the weighted measure-theoretic entropy plus the integral of F, and the supernumber is taken over all invariant measure. As a corollary, Y could obtain variational principle for weighted topological pressure entropy. This result generalizes some variational principles for topological pressure for compact or non-compact sets, and also improves the Feng and Huang's definition from the one-sided action dynamical system into ZE action dynamical systems. And now I will give the outline of the proof of this variational principle for weighted topological pressure. The proof is divided into two parts, and first we will give the lower bound. That is, for any invariant measure, the lower bound is given by the weighted measure-theoretic entropy plus the integral. First, we take the ergodic decomposition for an invariant measure. Then the integral of f of here tau is a measure defined on this stuff, defined on some subset of the invariant measure space. And the integral of f could be decomposed into the integral of f with respect to ergodic measure m, so that the weighted measure-theoretic entropy could also be decomposed by the entropy with respect to an ergodic measure. So we only need to prove that this inequality is valid for any mu belongs to ergodic measure space, denoted by a capital H by the weighted measure-theoretic measure start. And our proof will use the Bookhoff ergodic theorem and a weighted version of the Green-Katok formula on local entropy. Here is the weighted version of the Green-Katok formula. And that is, for each ergodic measure mu, we have the following equalities. And the right-hand side is the weighted entropy, and here is the weighted all equals. Because this limit exists for almost all x belong to x1. I want to make some remarks on this weighted version of Green-Katok formula. If A equals to this vector, this is the non-weighted version. And if B equals to 1, then the above theorem is reduced to the classical Green-Katok theorem on local entropy. And when D equals to 1, Feng and Huang has established a weighted version of Green-Katok theorem based on the weighted version of classical Shannon-Macmillan-Freeman theorem as a special case, because in their case B equals to 1. Since we consider the...
May I comment it? I think I don't know all these things. Green-Katok more or less know. But for me, the story started in mid-70s. It was beautiful Mishurevich proof of variational principle. I think independently done by Manfred Benker. And that if we have measure-theoretic entropy for some partition, then we can make this partition into sets slightly smaller and something between. And it doesn't matter what is the shape in between, because we don't lose much from measure entropy, and then we can find an epsilon separated set related to this not partition but some MLO sets which are within some distance from each other. So we don't lose much from entropy, and then we obtain by definition topological entropy. And this beautiful idea that, by the way, written by Misiurewicz also for ZD. I think it is because before there were more complicated,
Yeah.
by Villebourg and Goodwin, etc. This one is just one page. So I think you mentioned many names here, but I think the heart of this Brin Katok and but this Brin Katok maybe also because Katok somehow approximated dimension 2 at least. When given a given measure with positive Platonic exponent, he was able to find hyperbolic subset, which doesn't lose much entropy.
You mentioned with the Brin Katok formula and the variational principle.
No,
I formula is just a way of calculating entropy.
I just say how to find some nice set that you know the topological entropy is bigger than up to delta, then measure-theoretic entropy, which can be defined by partition, not by separate sets. I think in Brin Katok this Misiurewicz idea, or maybe it was Katok also the same time, is hidden in it also. That's why I said at the beginning I don't remember where the Brin Katok. I never really read it carefully because I understood from the beginning how it was. This was Katok. Surfaces, this was Katok.
You are right. Actually, but now I understood your comment. Yeah, this is correct. This is correct. There is a relation in the proof between these two things.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, in the case, we will consider the active proof is more complicated. And since we consider the abelian group actions, we will use the Shannon Macmillan Freeman theorem for the minimal groups alternative. Actually, Lindenstrass considered the very general cases for a minimal group, but we will only use the conclusions for abelian groups. So let's continue with the lower bounds. There exists n, a natural number n, and a subset of x contained in x1 with the this measure mu is agordic, and this measure is bigger than 1/2, such that for each x belong to this set and each n bigger than capital N, we have these two inequalities. This is because here we have used the weighted version of Brin Katok formula, and the second inequality we have used the Birkhoff's agordic theorem for abelian group. And if we choose S equals to the integral plus the capital H is denoted by the weighted measure-theoretic entropy, we will prove that this F-dimension measure is bigger than 0. Please recall that the weighted topological pressure is the critical value of S, such as lambda jumps from infinity to 0. So if this measure is bigger than 0, then the weighted topological pressure is bigger than S, and S equals to the integral of f of the potential function plus the weighted measure-theoretic entropy. This is valid for any third is positive. So we have finished the lower bound. And the upper bound is more complicated. We will use following idea of Feng and Huang. We will use the upper semi-continuity of some entropy functions. For epsilon positive and a natural number m, we will define the epsilon m partition as the partition upper, such that the diameter of upper is smaller than epsilon, and the cardinality of the cover is smaller than m. Where the epsilon partition is the collection of this quantity over all m. And if for a natural number m, which satisfies the epsilon m partition is not empty, then this map for theta belongs to the probability space, and capital H theta is defined by the interval of this quantity, and the interval is taken over for all partition belongs to the epsilon m partition. This map is upper semi-continuous for each L. And we also we have investigated three kinds of entropy functions. This is the second. The difference with the former one is that here the interval is taken over all epsilon partitions. This is the epsilon m partitions. This is also upper semi-continuous, since if we have proved that this map is continuous, then the interval of overall m is also semi-continuous function. And third, we also use the third entropy function. This map is for all invariant measure mu, and the map maps mu into this function. It is the interval over all epsilon partitions, and this is the measure-theoretic entropy of T with respect to the partition alpha. This is also upper semi-continuous. Actually, these three entropy functions have the following relations. For invariant measure theta, the first equality is directly from the definition, and the second equality is because we have used the definition of the measure-theoretic entropy, and this is the limit of this quantity, and the limit exists and equal to the interval, and then we exchange the interval and this quantity is the definition of the second entropy function. If we prove the second map is upper semi-continuous, then the interval of some upper semi-continuous function is also upper semi-continuous. We will use these three entropy functions, and we investigate their upper semi-continuity. In the proof of the upper bound estimate, we also use a dynamical Forstmann lemma. Let F be continuous function, and suppose that the weighted topological pressure of the potential F is straightly positive. Then for each S, which is straightly smaller than this pressure, there exists a probability measure mu epsilon positive natural number, such that for any x belongs to x1 and each n bigger than capital N, we could estimate the new measure of the weighted ball in this way. Please recall that this quantity appears in the definition of weighted topological pressure. So there are two key tools we will use to establish the variational principle between weighted topological pressure and weighted measure-theoretic entropy, that is the weighted version of Green-Kapocka formula and this dynamical performance model. And we will use this new construct that is to prove that the aftermath of the topological pressure. This is the proof is complicated, and I will omit the proof here, the details here. So I have finished my talk.
I can do.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, I can, as long as we have this upper bound, I can remind you, again, measure-theoretic, but maybe it is older approach as to this upper bound. You just define topological pressure in classical situation using n epsilon separated sets and summing these potentials. So just distribute the measure on such n epsilon separated sets according to the potential. And then you can write the formula for pressure, entropy just for this finite partition plus integral of this potential. And then go to the limit with these n epsilon separated sets, keeping epsilon set, growing n, and take close to optimal these n epsilon separated sets, and take a limit of these measures. And miraculously, it occurs that this measure is the right one. It's up to epsilon.
Right? There is no
Any limit.
Exactly.
So it is very nice, very general. If you have plenty of methods to find this good measure, which almost gives you. Well, I think that this proof is incorporated here somehow, but I didn't follow this.
And I would like to ask, what is the difference between the Z case, the one that was done before, and the proof you gave? If you could comment on that.
The proof.
What was
What is
here? You did the ZK case, right? Before the Z case was done by Feng and Huang. So, were there any difficulties?
The basic idea are the same with some modifications.
What about amenable?
Right. So why didn't you do the amenable?
Next step.
I guess this version principle is valid for amenable group action, maybe. So possible.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, may I give a comments?
Please.
Yeah, actually, someone in the audience said whether or not this Ruelle's approach can hold in this weighted case. Actually, I think there is some essential difficulty following that way. Because the key point.
Hear you. Just a second. We will try to. We don't hear you well, so we will try to make the sound.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if we can do this again. Okay.
Okay, I can see again.
Now we can see you also.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
We hear you better, yes. So if you could please say it again.
Okay. So someone in the audience suggest a way use Ms. Ruelle's a separate set method to prove this variational principle. The there is some essential difficulty to find out an invariant measure to approximate the so-called equilibrium state. So the method that suggests we used with Feng and Huang, we actually used some very special technique used by maybe first go back to McMullen. He used some special combinatoric argument to find out this invariant measure. Actually, that was further elaborated by Perez and Qiang Huo. So we use some very special combinatorial argument so that the construct measure after some average actually will converge to some invariant measures. And it seems quite difficult to follow the original approach by Hausdorff.
So would that also imply that it's how to generalize it to the amenable case?
Pardon me? Can
Amenable.
yeah, amenable, we don't know. We don't know whether or not we haven't checked. Yeah. And also, there is another approach by proving this variational principle, weighted variational principle by Tsukamoto. So in the symbolic case, the approach of Tsukamoto is essentially the same as the original approach of Qiang Huo, and also it's the same as the original approach by Barrier and I in 2012. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Are there any other comments or questions? So if not, let's thank the speaker again. Thank you. All right.
Currently.
We have no comments?
No.
No, I see we have a name here. Just
Yeah.
maybe there is only his name, but it's not. It's not.
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, it is. It's Nito. Hello.
Hello.
Are you in Poland or not here?
Yes, I'm in Poland.
Not very perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
So okay, so goodbye to everybody.
Bye. Goodbye.